Welcome back to another episode of our Sea-Doo GSX Revival. Today's episode, we're going to be tearing everything down on this machine and getting it ready for new plastics, paint, and everything else that's going to make it look as amazing as it should. Now, if you missed the last episode, let me bring you up to speed real quick.
Last episode, we drove 8 hours to buy not one, but two Sea-Doo GSX jet skis for a ridiculous discount. Both being labeled as ran when parked, I was told that with just a little bit of work, I could get them running and driving within a few weeks. But after tearing into them and finding one of them has a seized engine and the other is plagued by electrical problems, we named these skis Bad Decision and Mistake. And now we're in too deep to quit, so it's time to do a full teardown on this ski and see if Bad Decision holds up to its name.
So we've got a bunch of faded plastics, a bunch of really crusty old decals on here that need to come off. You can see in this one all of this nice purple that was originally on it that matched this purple plastic. And then, for example, this one over here is just completely faded out. There's no purple at all left in it. The purple on the top of the text is even faded out, just back to red underneath it. So we have a lot of cosmetic work to do on this. I've also noticed that these bumpers right here specifically have been replaced at some point. They're basically brand new. Very nice dark purple on those, but these corner ones are very faded and gross and old, so we need to do something about those too. We also have some damage in the vinyl on our little chin guard here. And over in the corner, a ton of UV fading and chipping on this badly spray painted yellow seat. So I think the best thing to do here is just get started tearing everything off that we need to refurbish, and then we'll have an idea of exactly how much work it's going to take to bring this thing back to life. So without further ado, let's get tearing into it. And our first plug has been found with some serious corrosion on it. All the other plugs look really good, except this one. This one literally had water in the plug and it's now on my hand. That's not great. We'll have to clean these up. Hopefully they still work, but this is the wiring harness that goes up to our gauges here. It makes a whole lot of sense why those are full of water currently. Now, to separate the lower and upper half of this front hood, you actually need a 7/32 extended length socket, specifically to get into these really deep holes here. They're not easy. Well, this bolt down in here is stuck because they did some sort of weird something to the plastic here and it's all chewed up. And I can't actually even get my socket down in there to get it to turn. So we might have to widen this hole up a little bit. It should fit perfectly. This one came out fine, but this one is just a little bit too tight. Ha ha! We got it out. All right, now in here, whoa! Frog! There's a frog in there. I didn't even notice that little fella. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy, you've been on a long journey, huh? He's me. Oh, okay. Look at this little guy. He was living in my jet ski. What's up, bud? What are you doing? All right, we're gonna put him outside and get back to work. Well, this is quite the harness going to this gauge here. This is our info gauge, and there's definitely a little bit of saltwater corrosion on these cables. I'm hoping that nothing's too badly corroded. This is a good time to show you guys that wiring connector right there. It's definitely going to need to be cleaned out, and there's a couple pins in there that are really, really gnarly. So we'll have to see what we can do about that one. For now, let's just keep taking this sucker apart. we got more water in here. Oh, we got a lot of water in here. Oh, God. Okay, yeah, I have a feeling this gauge is probably completely cooked. Oh, no. All right, we got the water out of there. That is crusty. All right, now we got to figure out how this whole assembly pops out of here. Maybe it goes, oh, it goes forward. Okay. Okay, well, either way, we can pull this gauge through now. All right. I guess you can pull the gauges without pulling this actual hood. All right, that one's out. All right, so I figured it out that these are actually little clips in here. And this one is broken, so I can actually just pull it straight up through, and that's why that side came off. And this one is really old and really brittle, and I'm trying not to break it, but it's just not flexing. All right, I'm not gonna play with this too much because I think it's just gonna break, and I'll pretty much have access to everything that I need on the exterior doing it like this. So I'm just gonna leave that attached and we'll carry on.
So here I'm taking the info gauge apart, and there is a metal crimp that goes around this ring, and I'm peeling it back using a flathead screwdriver. It's a pretty delicate process because you don't want to tear the metal, but this is pretty much the only way to get this cover off in order to get access to the gauge itself.
All right, our gauge came off nice and clean. Got some more water under there. Our screen is definitely not in good condition here. Now I should be able to pretty easily pop this out. It's a little tight in here from all the corrosion, I think. There we go. Little gasket seal comes out. And then our whole gauge should be able to kind of push through from the back here. I'm just going to push this grommet through. There we go. Gross. Okay. Well, everything is just disgusting on this gauge. So, I'm going to try to push this through without breaking anything. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't look good to me at all. Let's take a closer look here. Does that circuit board look good still? I'm gonna take a good guess and say no. I'm gonna say no. That's a bad circuit board. I don't think any amount of cleaning, polishing, or otherwise is gonna save that. Wow. That is disgusting. Well, we'll add that to our parts list. Well, personally, I'd love to avoid having to take apart the speedometer, but it also has water in it, and I also realized it has a broken needle in it, so we're gonna have to pull this one apart as well. Okay, the circuit board on the speedometer actually looks pretty good. We are almost 100% clean on this one. There is signs of maybe a burnt resistor here, which is not great. But the actual speedometer windings and everything here look really good. But we do definitely have a burnt resistor here. Well, unfortunately, not too much great news so far. We've got a totally busted info gauge and our speedometer needle is broken. So we've got some extra parts that we need to order for those. Now, let's get our handlebars taken off here. Our beeper does not fit through the hole of the handlebars, which means that the beeper's got to be unplugged. Now, why would they wire this way? There's no way this is original, right? That the beeper goes through the little hole here. I mean, maybe, but that's horrible. There's a horrible way to wire this, because now it means I would have to pull this plug all the way through the handlebars just to get this out. What are you doing? There's no way that's how this is intended to be done. Well, maybe it is. Okay. Well, there's no going back now. Beeper's pulled through. I guess this is called the chin guard is out. All right, next I've got to take the choke linkage all the way off, it seems, just to be able to pull this through and get this other piece of red plastic off of here. All right, choke linkage is disconnected, and now we're going to pull it up through here. There we go. We did lose a nut and a washer on the way up front though. All right, well, that'll be a problem for some extra hardware down the line here. And then I guess basically we can just pull this and it should feed all the way through. There we go. Grommets out. I guess the grommet will feed also up through the steering column. It looks like everything basically comes up through the steering column on this. So this is now out. This will pull all the way through. There we go. Choke linkage is out. And now we can pull it the final bit of the way through our plastic here. And she's out. Next up on the removal block is going to be our rear seat, our rear handle cover thing. All right, rear handle is off, and this will make it a lot easier to clean the rest of this gunk up too. Next, we're going to remove our rave valves fully because we are going to rebuild these, spring, hat, and all. Ooh, that came out really well actually. No stuck, nothing. Let's see if our second one comes out as easily. Ooh-wee! Okay, well, kind of. But our exhaust is in the way. The exhaust manifold is in the way of pulling the rave valve out. How dare it? No, that's good and in the way for sure. Okay, before I go and tamper with the other one, I think my theory is right that these are, yeah, these just spin off. They're just threaded, and then all of this kind of comes off. And that should mean that we can pull the other one out of the engine without taking the exhaust off. All right, let's see if we can loosen this. Ooh, that one's tight. That's pretty crusty on there. All right, we're gonna try it though. There we go. Top is off. Should be able to pull all the guts out here now. Very good. And let's see if we can pull the valve out and clear our manifold. Yes, we can. Heck yeah. Ooh, a little bit dirty, a little bit of carbon buildup there, but that's to be expected on something that's coming out of the exhaust manifold side here. Nice. Now, one other thing that's broken on this machine is the left sponson. That is the little fin that runs right along the side there. You can see the 4 mounting bolts have held on to some of the plastic, but the rest of the fin is missing. It's supposed to look like this one over here, but this is actually not original to the ski either, I found out. This looks more to be a Sea-Doo XP sponson and not a Sea-Doo GSX sponson. So I'm gonna leave this one here because these are kind of a pain to deal with. And I'm actually gonna get a replacement that is a Sea-Doo XP sponson for this side. Apparently they're a little bit more aggressive. They allow it to handle a little bit better. So I'm just gonna do the upgrade and hopefully that works out on this side. Apparently the bolt pattern is exactly the same for this one. So we're gonna order one of those and get it in. But for now, I have to get these bolts out of here so we can actually do the replacement. Now the problem with that is if I come over here and zoom in here, these little arches back here are what actually house the bolts, and they're about 6 inches deep into each one of those arches. And there's one arch there, and then you can't even see the others because the exhaust muffler is in the way. So, in order to get the sponson on and off, we actually have to remove the muffler. So that's going to be our next task here. All right, I think we've got the exhaust unhooked. Oh, we're bound up on one silly little wire here. Unhook that, and there we go. Whoo! Jeez, that took a lot to get out of there. This thing is filthy. We're gonna give this a wash while it's out too. Well, that definitely freed up some room down in here. We can actually almost see the other spots where the bolts are gonna go in. So let's see if we can get some extensions in there and pull these sponson mounts out of here. All right, I'm gonna see if I can even get a socket on this bolt. I'm gonna try it just by hand first. Apparently these are a real pain to get to. It says it's a 10mm socket, and I need a wobble socket and an extension, and then maybe I can grab it. Thus far, no grabby. I'm gonna take the wobble off and just see if I can hook anything on there. Okay, there we go. I got one nut on there. Let's see if I can get my electric ratchet. Oh, is this just spinning on the outside? Hold on. It sure was. Ah, there we go. Yeah. And this is the gold that we are mining for. These little studs that are built in and completely broken off. All right, let's do 3 more. Number 2 is out. That was pretty easy. There we go. Number 3 out. Aha! 4th one is off. If you were trying to use a traditional ratchet to pull these off, I don't think you would ever get enough like cranking movement to actually pull these out of there. Take a look at that. We are all removed. Here are all of our broken pieces right there. Now we just got to get a new sponson to put on there and hopefully be able to get the bolts back on as well. I also pulled the VTS motor while we were back in there, It was only held on with 2 out of the 4 bolts that are supposed to go in it. The wiring looks pretty crusty, but it's also the original wiring from the Sea-Doo, so I don't think this has ever been replaced before, but we can test it.
So the way we can test this motor is by hooking it directly up to 12 volt power from our battery. And that's just done by hooking each lead to a positive and negative and then touching it directly to the battery. Unfortunately, even testing it this way, we get no current flowing through the motor and it's just completely cooked. I'm not sure what I expected other than that because the visual appearance of this motor is not great at all. And thankfully, we do have another one of these stored in the trailer that these came with, and I'm just hoping that we only need one of these and not 2. But now with all of the parts removed that needed to come off, it's time to pull all of these old vinyl stickers off. Now sit back and enjoy this transformation. I figured the next step in the teardown process should probably be the rest of the exhaust system. I'd already pulled the muffler out and I knew I was going to clean and repaint that, so I might as well pull the rest of the exhaust tubing out of here. In order to do that, we first have to remove the carb, and then you get access to the rest of the bolts that hold the rest of the exhaust system on. Unfortunately, these are steel bolts driven into an aluminum block, which means they suffer heavily from galvanic corrosion, I believe is what it's called. You get this white powdery substance that builds up in the threads over time and makes these things almost literally impossible to remove.
Whew. One piece of the exhaust pipe is out. Well, in addition to the muffler. Woohoo!
And unfortunately, in the process of pulling the exhaust bolts out, I snapped 4 of them. And there's only 6 in there. So I now get to deal with the lengthy process of drilling out and retapping 4 bolts inside of this engine. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to really do this with the engine inside of the ski, which means I now get to continue the teardown process by pulling the entire engine out. Thankfully, it's only held in by 3 engine mount bolts, which are fairly easy to access, and these are not corroded, which meant that the engine came out pretty easily. Normally, I would recommend using an engine hoist, but I haven't actually moved mine to my new shop yet, so lift with your back, not your knees, or something like that is what they usually say. Either way, don't do it the way that I'm doing it. There's many better ways to do it, but if you can pick up an engine like this, I guess why not try once? So with the engine fully pulled out and on the ground, it gave me a lot more leverage to start drilling these bolts out. And this was not a fun process. These are super, super hard bolts because they've been heat cycled so many times with the engine that you need special cobalt drill bits to get through these. Normal metal drill bits are just going to do basically nothing to them. I wasn't able to get them to even start the holes. So a couple trips to the hardware store got me cobalt drill bits that were able to get through this a lot easier. And once I had a hole drilled, I was able to fit an easy out into them, and I tried to back the bolt out using that, and I just made it worse because the easy out broke. So now with a broken piece of tool steel stuck inside of the hole that I already drilled, I got to spend even longer drilling out the tool steel and then getting back to drilling out the bolt, and I decided not to try the easy outs anymore and just drill every single one of these all the way through, stepping up the drill bits one step at a time until I basically drilled the threads clean out of these, and then had to re-tap them so I could put the bolts back in. Now, you have to be really careful with this process because you are dealing with aluminum, which means you can drill very easily into the aluminum and make these holes bigger than they need to be. Thankfully, I was super careful trying to stay centered on the bolts while I was drilling them out, and I was able to tap these threads pretty cleanly, and our bolts all go back in the way that they're supposed to, and will hold this exhaust manifold on the right way when it's time to put this back together. So with that absolute beast of a task out of the way, it was time to transition and shift gears over to something a little bit more fun. Now we're going to be repairing some of the gel coat on this ski, starting with the white stuff. I have a couple of stress cracks that I'm going to try and fill using a method I saw online where you mix colloidal silica with the white gel coat and then spread it in using a Bondo spreader. And what this does is basically fill those cracks up and make them disappear. I'm also using this opportunity to fill a couple other chips in the gel coat that are around the ski, and hopefully this comes out really nice. Now, by mixing this colloidal silica with the gel coat, you basically make a filler out of the gel coat. It's a little bit thicker than standard gel coat because of the silica, and that allows you to push it into those holes and allow it to set up in a way that it normally wouldn't. So first we're going to apply it just using a popsicle stick, which allows you to get the material on there and kind of push it into all of those cracks and crevices. And once we get all of the cracks filled, we're going to go back through with the Bondo spreader and make sure everything is smoothed out as best as possible. And this is what it looks like after it goes on. It doesn't need to necessarily be perfectly smooth, but obviously you want to do your best so you eliminate as much sanding down the line as possible. This one repair on the right side was not smoothed down very well, and it will definitely bite me in the butt when it comes to sanding later on. So we let those patches set up overnight and fully cure the gel coat, and now it's time to start taking this oxidation off the ski, which means sanding from 120 grit all the way up to 2000 grit sandpaper. Now, this is a very lengthy process, and it's very delicate because you do not want to burn all the way through the gel coat at any point in time. It's kind of like sanding clear coat on a car, but it's a jet ski, and there's a lot less surface area to sand. So I just went step by step all the way up from 120 to 2000 grit, and then we hit it with compound and a compounding foam disc, and then stepped it up to polishing for a final step to get this thing to really glisten. Now with the top side all polished up, I figured it was time to hit the bottom as well. This red oxidized gel coat has potential for sure, and I'd love to see if we can get it to shine again. So continuing with sanding, it's time to hit the plastics. Now these things are gross. Again, super oxidized by the Florida sun here. Again, all the more reason why you guys need covers if you are storing these things outside. Honestly, I recommend covers for everything, even if you're storing it indoors, because it keeps dust and debris off them as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about covers down the line here because I do not want to do this process twice. So for the plastics, I'm just going to start with 120 grit and then sand up to 240, and then we're going to hit them with a coat of epoxy primer so we have a nice layer to start adhering our paint to. But making sure you get all those nitty-gritty areas sanded down properly and getting all of your scratches uniform on these is probably the hardest part because there are a lot of small areas on these plastics. But an orbital sander and some good old hand sanding makes quick work of it, and then we can throw down our epoxy primer.
So we got our plastics all primed up, and now it's time to get some paint on them. I'm using a topside marine paint for these, which seems to be a lot more UV resistant, and I'm hoping will allow this to come back to a much nicer red color. This is just a Rust-Oleum topside paint in bright red. I'm not going for a perfect match on this, but ideally having it pretty close would be nice. Ooh, that is a beautiful red color. Hot damn. And they say to mix this with about 10 to 15% xylene when spraying out of a spray gun, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Now, I've never used a paint gun before to paint anything. I've been around people who've used them, and I know the gist of it. But this is going to be a new experience for me for sure. Hopefully it all turns out good. All right, we're going to pop our respirator on, get our gun all hooked up, spray a little test spot, and then we'll paint. Now that our plastics have been painted and are drying over in the corner, it's time to de-purple the jet ski. Now, I know this is going to be a very controversial subject because a lot of people like the purple on these jet skis. I find it to be a little bit dated. It makes the jet ski look a little older than it needs to, because without all the purple and weird color schemes on this, I think it actually looks very modern. So I'm going to turn this purple into black. Now, I'm not just going to spray paint it black and use Rust-Oleum. I'm actually going to put truck bed liner paint on this because I think that these parts in specific come in contact with a lot of hands and a lot of movement. If you're grabbing the bumper to pull yourself up on the jet ski, you want to have grip on it, you want to have texture on it. So I think that truck bed liner is going to go a long way. And if it works on these plastics, I'm also going to paint the bumper that goes all the way around the jet ski in the same bed liner as well. But as with all the other processes of painting, this one's going to start with sanding. Sanded up, and now it's time to apply our bed liner paint. Now this is significantly thicker than any of the other paints that I've used. It's almost like a liquid rubber type paint. So I'm actually just going to spread it on with a normal paintbrush like this. and hope for the best results possible. A lot of marine applications actually call to use a paintbrush for paint application, which I believe is called tipping. They call it tipping, where you use the tip of the paintbrush to kind of level out the paint. Now, this is obviously a little bit different because it's bed liner paint, it's not marine paint, so I have no idea how it's going to lay down. I have no idea how thick it's actually going to be. I know that it needs about 24 hours in between each coat. So we will be doing 2 coats on this just to make sure we have full coverage and good texture and this doesn't rub off anytime soon. But overall, I mean, it looks pretty good. It's going on nice and black. It's got definitely a texture to it, which is good. I want kind of that grippy texture that bed liner has. That's the entire purpose of doing it this way. Man, if I don't end up keeping these jet skis, somebody's gonna get a really, really nice machine out of this.
Next up on the task list is to remove this nasty vinyl from our seat. And this just involves pulling all of the staples out. It wasn't in there very well, and a lot of these staples actually just broke off because they're not even stainless steel. So pulling this off wasn't too difficult, but I definitely recommend getting a staple puller for this. It makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, we just pulled the last staple on the cover, and we're about to see how bad the original yellow is on. Oh man, I dropped it. What a fool. Ah. Well, it's not great, but it's not bad either. I expected it to be a whole lot worse, having just been covered up by this nasty old thing. They didn't even bother to use stainless steel staples when they put this on. So that was pretty easy to pull off. It was just, most of the staples just broke. Definitely some issues with the foam. It looks like there might be a little mold growing in there. That's not very good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this yellow cover off as well, because I have a whole brand new roll of red marine vinyl that I'm gonna put over this. And hopefully my recovering job is a little bit better than theirs was.
Now, it turns out that the yellow cover that's on here is actually glued to the foam as well as stapled, so there's not really any way to pull this fully off of the seat. You can pull the staples off and make sure that the space is cleared up for new staples to go in, but otherwise, this yellow vinyl doesn't actually come off.
All right, grand reveal number 2, taking the seat off. Ooh, yeah, that's mold. Yeah, that's mold. I smelled that a mile away. That is some juicy mold. Ooh, oh. All right, well, that's what a seat looks like with nothing on it. No foam, no nothing, just seat. And I think I need a new piece of foam for that, because I don't want to sit on mold. Hello. You might find yourself wondering, why am I in my bathroom right now? Well, after researching new seats for a jet ski and finding out that it was going to set me back about $300, I decided we're going to go the old school way and try and clean this thing using a bathtub full of water and bleach. I've got 1 gallon of bleach right here, and I'm just gonna pour the entire thing in here, and then basically let this foam soak up all of the water, all of the bleach and the water and everything else, and hopefully this disinfects our seat completely. Now, I don't really care about the vinyl that's on this because we're recovering it anyway, and it's really gross. So Time to dip. And we really gotta squish it to make sure that everything gets in there. And what I'm just trying to do here is get the foam to soak up the bleach so it gets all the way through all those pores. Mold is gross. Mold is really gross. Oh yeah, that's getting real heavy. That is very full. So I'm gonna let this soak in here for 10 minutes or so and really get absorbed into that foam. I want the bleach really in there so we get rid of all of this nasty mold and mildew. Discoloration like there is probably not gonna go away, and that's fine. I just wanna kill all the gross stuff that's in there so we can recover this and not deal with problems in the future. All right, it's been about 10 minutes and my entire bathroom smells like a pool supply store. So I am going to wring this out one more time. You can actually see, hopefully, the water is getting murky, which is kind of exactly what I wanted to see. Which means a lot of that mold is coming off. I'm actually gonna flip this over just to make sure that as much of that gets into this foam as possible. Oh yeah, there's still some air bubbles coming out of the foam. That means it's not fully saturated. All right, let's pop the drain plug, get all this nastiness drained out of here, and then we'll wring it out and dry it outside. All right, tub's empty. Time to hop in here and start squishing out our foam. We want this as dry as possible before we send it to the outside. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, this is working pretty well, actually. The squish and step method really helps when you weigh the human equivalent of a hydraulic press. Now, this obviously isn't gonna get all of it out, so it is gonna have to take some time to dry out in the sun before we do anything with it. All right, it's substantially lighter, but certainly not dry. So like I said, we're gonna go and take this outside, leave it out in the sun for a little while, and let her dry out. We got the seat outside. It's gonna sit here in direct sunlight in 100+ degree Florida summer weather all day and hopefully dry out before the rains come this afternoon. It may take a couple days of drying, so we're gonna take this and probably put it inside if it does start to rain, but just leaving it out here to dry out is gonna be our best option right now. I just got done moving that seat cushion around, and something that's a little bit of a warning to you guys, my eyes are all messed up from dealing with the mold on that, and I looked it up, apparently can cause severe sensitivity to light. And so right as I went back inside from working on that and leaving it outside, my eyes, like everything is super dark, it's very difficult to see stuff. So just as a word of warning, probably wear like goggles and a respirator, honestly, if you're working around mold. This is my first time really doing anything serious with mold, so live and learn, but definitely not something you want to be playing around with carelessly. That stuff is nasty and can do a whole lot more to your body than I thought. I just Googled some of the stuff that it can do even over short-term exposure, and it's not pretty. So definitely be safe if you're working around stuff with mold, especially marine stuff. There's a ton of it. I got really itchy, my face is itchy, my eyes hurt, so just be really, really careful if you're working around this stuff. Well guys, I threw our repainted parts back on the ski just to see how it would look, and oh my gosh, does this look nice. This red that we repainted the plastics with is almost a perfect match to the red that's on the bottom of the ski, and it looks so freaking good. The black also turned out super nice. I definitely prefer it over the purple, and it's got a really nice grippy texture because it's bed liner. So even if your hands are wet, you'll be able to turn all of this. And again, for this rear handle, if you're pulling yourself up on the ski in the water, you want that to have some grip on it, and I like that a whole lot better than smooth plastic. So the bed liner is definitely a go, which means that the rest of these bumpers here can also be painted. Now I gotta be honest, some of the repairs on the gel coat didn't turn out the way that I wanted them to. Like this one here, you can still see clear through to the fiberglass, I believe that is underneath. It is super smooth and it's still shiny along here because of all the wet sanding that I did, but there's definitely still some cosmetic issues on the body. And then coming around here to where our original stress cracks were, you can still see them really clearly through here. Even though they are smooth to the touch, you would never know that they're there if you weren't able to see them, but unfortunately we can see them. Now that brings up the question of, do I bite the bullet and just paint the entire ski? I'm already in this deep at this point, the whole thing is stripped down, it would be pretty easy to paint it, so that would be option one. And if I do repaint it, do I keep it white or do I go something crazy with the color, like purple or black or gray? I don't think I would want to do black because it would be super hot here in Florida, but maybe a different color than white, I don't know. Now, in addition to some of the cosmetic issues on the top side, when I was buffing underneath here, I found this chip in the hull. Now this is going to need some actual fiberglass work to patch this in and make it smooth again. So it looks like they probably ran into a rock when they were sliding it up on sand or something. There's also a lot of scuffs and stuff down under here that even the polishing and everything didn't take out. Now it is a 27-year-old ski, so obviously there's going to be some issues, but I figure I might as well try and patch these in while I can. So I've got some extra red gel coat coming and we'll hopefully be able to fill these in, as well as some of these other little nicks that are along the bottom here. But as far as cosmetics go, this thing is looking 1,000 times better than when we first picked it up. I am really happy with the amount of progress that we've made so far, but as per usual, it's now time to wait for more parts and chemicals and compounds and things to arrive so we can get this thing back in working order. And don't forget, we've got the entire engine out right now, which means we're gonna be able to repaint all of this and make it pretty again, as well as hopefully make sure that everything is gonna work when we put it back together. But guys, as of right now, I am super stoked with how this thing is coming along. I hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. We've got plenty more content to come. And then of course, we have its matching brother still sitting way out back that still needs a full rebuild on it as well, just like this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. And I'll catch you guys in the next one where we start putting the ski back together and getting it finished.
Said I'm taking big shots, just stop where I'm driven, no pit stops. This hot, I ain't playing like a 6 spot. Pissed off, thought I told him this a chip shot. I ain't missing cause you know I'm taking big shots. Just stop where I'm driven, no pit stops. This hot, I ain't playing like a 6 spot. Pissed off, thought I told him this a chip shot. I ain't missing cause you know I'm taking big shots. They been trying to get me cheap like a thrift shop, but I told them it's my time, check the wristwatch. They been talking